Hey everybody, welcome to Rock and Roll Shin-Soo Choo, episode 16. My name is Gabe Estel, and I'm here with my wonderful cohorts. That's the same thing, right?
Sure, I'll take it.
Yeah, right. Swap those words out. Dennis Levi Leach and Jonathan Getz. How's it going, fellas?
Good.
Groovy.
Good. Just trying to stay warm here. All right. So, baseball has been in the news lately, even though we're in kind of the latter part of the off season now. A lot of the big moves have happened. But earlier this week, the Hall of Fame announced its 2015 class, and they are inducting 4 players this year. Typically they do 3, right? But this year they've gone with 4. And these are all, I guess, kind of one of the cool things about the Hall of Fame now is it's all guys that really played in our lifetimes. I mean, when we were growing up, it was a lot of people that we didn't really have a connection to that were getting inducted. Whereas, over, I would say probably the last 5-6 years, it's all people that were on the baseball cards that we collected. And this year, probably some guys that were kind of emerging near the end of our baseball card collecting, but still nonetheless. We've got John Smoltz, the great reliever and starter for the Braves. We've also got Craig Biggio from the Astros. Probably, I don't know, would you guys say he's the most controversial pick of the 4?
The most questionable.
Yeah, I would say so.
Mm-hmm.
I think, unfortunately for the guy, I think spending his whole career on a team that never was really very good other than that World Series trip in 2005, that probably hurts your standing a little bit. It's kind of beyond his control. But, he now, correct me if I'm wrong, he started out as a catcher, right?
Yep. He moved straight down the middle of the field and back. Catcher second,
right.
Center second.
Right. Oh, yeah, he did play the outfield, didn't he? Yeah, right. So really athletic guy and a fun guy to watch. But, his name just probably, if you would have told me a couple years ago, it wouldn't really scream Cooperstown,
No.
And that's not to take away anything. He was a great player, but
you have to wonder if he only had 2,990 hits for his career, if he would have made it.
Right.
And if 10 hits should really make that much of a difference.
I think it opens the door. I mean,
right.
You know what I mean? I think him getting in opens the door for some players who might not have been considered, because now people are going to be like, well, Craig Biggio got it.
Those 3,000 hits, it's like magical. For the Hall of Fame voters.
It's the fairy dust on the vote.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the other 2, we've got Randy Johnson and Pedro Martinez. Definitely, I think both of those guys were
no-brainers.
No-brainers there. And gosh, it doesn't, those guys were pitching not that long ago too.
I know. It's surprising.
They're not wasting any time anymore.
Yeah.
It seemed like Randy Johnson was just pitching. I mean, it was 5 years ago, but it seems like it was just a couple.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So definitely, you got 3 really dominant pitchers, and then maybe one of the more questionable Hall of Fame choices in recent years. Anything stand out to you guys about these picks, or is there anybody who you think was snubbed this year?
Go ahead, Levi.
Well, I was trying to think, who were the people that barely got cut off this year?
Tim Raines was one. I know.
Piazza.
Piazza. That was
Bagwell and Raines.
Bagwell
and Schilling.
Schilling. Okay.
I think if Craig Biggio's in, probably Mike Piazza should be in.
I would agree with that.
Personally,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, they may just be like the baseball card collector kid in me still, but I always thought Mike Piazza was a better player than Craig Biggio.
If you had to start a franchise with one of those guys, who would you pick? I think I would pick Piazza.
Yeah.
He was the cream of the crop for a couple years in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
Probably right around the time we all started kind of stopped collecting cards. Is when he was really at his peak.
Yeah.
I remember getting his rookie cards. That was when I was still 92ish, right around there. I was still collecting, but then when he was at his apex, I was moved on to listening to Widespread Panic and things like that.
And he was always interesting because he was related to Tommy Lasorda for somehow, I forget.
Oh, really?
But
marriage or something.
I thought that Tommy Lasorda took him in, I don't know, the 50th round of the draft just as a favor because it's like his son-in-law or something like that. And he turns out to, I think did he win Rookie of the Year? One of those many Dodgers to win Rookie of the Year, possibly.
Right, when it was all Dodgers, like Eric Karros won it.
Yeah, Raul Mendocino.
Yeah, right, a few others. Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that he went from this super late round pick into he'll probably make the Hall of Fame next year into a Hall of Famer. Is quite amazing.
Right. Yeah. So I would agree. Piazza before Biggio, definitely. For me.
But the Biggio thing again, it's the 3,000 hits and
and I forget that about him. I would say he's probably the person in that club that the people don't remember. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like if you listed all the people that were in the 3,000 club, I wouldn't have put Craig Biggio in it.
And as a comparison, just to show how much of a big deal 3,000 hits is, Johnny Damon was only, I think, about 150 hits away from 3,000. He received 0 votes this year.
Wow.
You would have thought that he could scrape it out for a few more years and collect 50 hits a year and get 3,000. All of a sudden he's in.
What did you tell me? Darren Erstad got some votes?
He got 1 vote. Yeah.
That was Darren Erstad's uncle.
Right.
It's
man. Well, the guy that I've talked about for a little while now, because I think you have to consider position as well, which I think makes a stronger case for Piazza too.
Definitely. Yeah.
He might even be ineligible now. I don't know. I know he's been on the ballot before. It's Brian Downing that played for the Angels. If you take into account that he was a catcher, and you look at the numbers over his career, they're really good. And he's one of those guys that, since we've been doing this podcast, I've been looking at a lot of stats from people we grew up watching. And he's one of those people that took me by surprise, like how good he was. I'd forgotten. I remember collecting his cards. I remember he had a Diamond King. And I remember him being one of, the better players on the Angels in the 80s. But, the numbers are really good for Brian Downing for a catcher. He deserves some consideration.
Other than what Gary Carter, are there any other 80s catchers in the Hall of Fame? Like, name some big-time 80s catchers that are...
Well, and Carter probably started in the 70s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fisk and Bent. Fisk started in the 70s.
Like, it's hard to... Like, I was just thinking, after you said Brian Downing, I can't think of a blockbuster 80s catcher that's in the Hall of Fame.
No, I'm offhand. No, I can't either. Obviously, I think for the early '90s, if the steroid scandal doesn't trip him up, I think Ivan Rodriguez will be.
Yeah.
There's so many question marks now with steroids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He'll be treated like Piazza, and that's one of the questions that surrounded Piazza a bit was, were the steroids. And so they thought that there were only light rumors, so we'll delay him here a few years, and then he'll eventually get in. The same will probably happen with Rodriguez. Yeah.
I wonder if the guys that came clean. You know how Giambi came clean about it. He was one of the only guys that was honest and said he did it, and I don't know. I guess he seemed kind of contrite about it. I wonder if they'll take that into account and be like, he was honest about it.
Well,
he didn't try to.
Andy
he wasn't
Pettit.
McGuire.
He
wasn't Rafael Palmeiro. Right?
Yeah. I think because McGuire was pretty apologetic about it.
But it took people to call him out on it, though.
Yeah, he denied it at first.
Yeah.
Because he was also he was kind of one of the first people to be accused of it, right?
He was. Oh, yeah.
So there wasn't really precedent for, how should I deal with this? In hindsight, if you compare him to Clemens, Clemens is still getting quite a few votes, so is Bonds. And, but McGuire...
That testimony from McGuire, like when he's in tears, is, even if you don't like the guy, that's tough to watch.
Yeah.
It's just a really uncomfortable scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm a Cubs fan, and I feel bad for Sosa sometimes because it's like, he's the only guy to hit 60 home runs 3 seasons or whatever, right? And you would think that would be an automatic stat to get you in the Hall of Fame, but now that you've been linked to steroids, it's like that page out of the history book has just been ripped out, and it's like it never existed.
So
biggest Chicago athlete post Michael Jordan, too, and Sosa.
They'll never be in.
What? So what's the solution? I mean, I've seen where I've seen where Poznanski, Joe Poznanski, who I'm a big fan of, baseball writer, says that you should essentially vote him in, I mean, because there's only so much you can do with speculation. And then I've heard other people say, yeah, go ahead and vote him in, and then just throw asterisks. Have explanations for this guy's career and all that surrounded it, controversy and warts and all.
Yeah, I say vote him in too. I mean, I'm doesn't matter at this point, I mean,
right.
Well, if they do that, I think if they do start to allow more guys who have had links or ties to the steroid era in, I think they're going to have to let Pete Rose in. I think they're going to have to posthumously let Shoeless Joe Jackson in.
Yeah, right.
Or you know what I mean? Because if they start to let guys who actually cheated and it affected their numbers over seasons, if they allow those in the Hall of Fame, they're going to have to allow those two guys in.
It's the Baseball Hall of Fame too. It's not the Character Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
Ty Cobb's like the worst person on the earth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I say you let him in at this point. I mean, unless they've been arrested, unless they've been, that's not the right word. Unless they've been, just
indicted,
proven guilty. If they've been indicted or something like that. Yeah. You got to let them in, It's just like the judicial system, It's innocent until proven guilty, I mean,
yeah.
And honestly, I think with the guys that had the talent, minus the roids, Clemens, Bonds, maybe Palmeiro, McGuire, Sosa.
Those are the guys.
I'd like to think those guys, even if you take away the drugs, have still been pretty damn good.
Yeah, those are the guys I feel the worst for because I think those are the guys that are. I think half those guys aren't going to get in because of it.
I mean, those drugs helped extend their careers, but for a hitter, baseball's still hand-eye coordination.
You still have to be able to hit the baseball.
And Barry Bonds could really hit a baseball really well. Even take away maybe the roids added like 5 more productive years to his career, that he wouldn't have had. Shit, he could have retired 5-6 years before
he would have
did.
Yeah, he
would have still would have been shooing to get in.
Yeah.
Same thing with Clemens as well, as for a pitcher. Yeah. So I don't know.
Do you think maybe they'll tell these guys you have to admit it in order to get in? Do you think that they would?
That'd make for an awkward ceremony, gosh.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into ethical territory with it now. You know what I mean? And so it's like, and part of me, like I said, I agree with what we are all saying, and I think it should be you should start voting them in. But the way it is right now, and the way that it has always been, is if you get linked to doing something bad, they're not going to let you in, whether it's gambling or cheating or taking steroids. That's the system, and guys have known that for the last 100 years. You know what I mean? In baseball, you don't get a lot of second chances if you screw up.
No,
I mean, all those guys' reputations are tarnished. I mean,
absolutely.
The fact that McGuire has a job as a hitting coach is kind of miraculous, just because to so many baseball fans, they put him on such a high pedestal in the late 90s. He was the All-American Norman Rockwell,
Oh, yeah, Apple Pie Mark McGuire.
Right, he played in St. Louis, which St. Louis, the Cardinals always have this really squeaky clean shit about him anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And he just such a fall from grace. I'm surprised the Dodgers hired him.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting too, because what he and Sosa did in that summer of '98, and I mean, it turned baseball's fortunes around, obviously, after the post-strike waning of the sport. It propelled this new era that Bud Selig presided over, and meanwhile Bud Selig is being rewarded with a $6 million a year pension, and will also maybe someday be considered for the Baseball Hall of Fame. I think they vote for commissioners, don't they?
Well, I know, like, he's a team owner as well, so I mean, I think he can get in on that somehow.
Yeah. So it would be a little bit hypocritical if how the writers revere Selig versus all these players.
A quick story about the Sosa McGuire year '98 before we transition here. It was the beginning of my sophomore year of college, was 1998. So, and when McGuire broke the record, that happened right around September. It was in the latter part of the season. The power went out in my building. Yeah, I was in my dorm and everybody was watching the game, right? I kid you not, the power goes out. And I lived in, it was at Western, I was in Lincoln Hall, and it's, a fairly kind of a high-rise dorm. It was like 12 or 13 floors. And you heard the biggest collective, like you could just hear it ringing throughout the building when the power went out. They dragged everybody outside because I think somebody pulled the fire alarm or something as well. We go inside, the power's turned back on, and he'd broken it's him standing on the field,
that's awful.
Giving a speech and shit. There's no DVRs. This is 1998.
That is awful. I was in St. Louis when he broke the record. I was staying with my aunt and uncle, and we watched it on TV, and then we heard I could hear the fireworks from their house, which is kind of neat. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fireworks that they let off at Busch Stadium.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was funny stuff, man.
That sucks.
Well, we're going to transition here a little bit. One of the guys who...
Two.
Actually, two. Yeah, two. Two of the guys who are getting inducted this year played in Montreal for a decent portion of their career. Maybe not their most famous stops, probably, but certainly a couple guys that really kind of had their early formative years in Montreal. Randy Johnson and Pedro Martinez. Both two guys played for the Expos, and, the Expos are kind of sort of the outlier of baseball franchises in the sense that, they played in probably North America's most European city, not the beautiful city, but not certainly a place that really screams put a baseball team here. So two guys that were in Montreal and now are going to the Hall of Fame. I assume they're probably not going to enter as Expos, is my guess.
It'll be interesting to see what emblems they do pick, each of them. Because, I mean, they both had pretty...
I think Pedro will be a Red Sox.
Pedro, I think the Red Sox undoubtedly. With Randy Johnson, tougher. Even though he played probably the most years in Seattle, is my guess.
I was going to say Seattle.
But he won a championship with Arizona. So.
With Arizona. And he ended his career in Arizona, too, I think.
And I think, did he win more Cy Youngs in Arizona, possibly?
Did he? Okay.
I don't know.
Oh.
It's interesting.
He seems to like the franchise, I mean, so he might just kind of go with his heart as opposed to, where he spent. Because he probably spent more years in Seattle and Montreal than he did. Remember, he played for the Yankees for a little while, too. And he also played for the Giants very briefly near the end of
Astros,
And the Astros, too. That was, he modeled more uniforms than any of the other guys getting inducted this year. So anyway, with that in mind, we have a special guest who visited Montreal to see a baseball game. You might not remember this, but back in March, Montreal hosted a couple exhibitions games between the Blue Jays and the Mets. And our special guest, 1995 Houston Astros 8th round draft pick, Ricky Cobb. How you doing, Ricky?
I'm doing well, man. I flamed out in high A ball, so I had to find another gig, so it became academics. So I appreciate you having me on.
Well, we're glad you're here. Thanks for doing this. Should be a lot of fun. Well, what we're talking about today, we're talking about baseball stadiums. And Ricky, we have Ricky on the show. He's a friend of the podcast, but also he's been to a lot of parks. Particularly within the last year, he went to a lot of parks, including the exhibition MLB game in Montreal back in March. So, Ricky, I want to ask you, of the 19 parks that you've seen, what is your favorite, and which would you say you wouldn't really have any desire to return to?
The second question is a tougher question for me, I think, because I find something to like in all of them.
Right.
Um, my favorite part, that the answer that I'm going to give you is really boring. It's a homer answer, but my favorite part is Wrigley.
Sure.
I went to Wrigley for the first time. I mean, again, I'm from Kentucky, and I'd never been to Chicago until I was almost 30. So I grew up watching Harry Carey and Steve Stone and the early '80s era Cubs. I think the first Cubs game I saw on WGN, Ferguson Jenkins was pitching.
Wow, nice.
When he came back for those couple of years at the end.
Yeah.
And so I'd always been a Cubs fan. And so I got to go to Wrigley for the first time when I was, I don't know, I think I was 29. And it was like stepping inside of your TV set,
Sure.
It was incredible. Now, a little bit of that wears off, when you're out there multiple times every year, since that's one of the big perks of, getting a gig in the Chicago area is you can avail yourself of the sporting events and ballparks. But Wrigley is my favorite. So maybe a more interesting answer would be second favorite, which I would say my second favorite park that I've ever been to is Dodger Stadium.
Nice.
Really, I went there just this summer and was highly impressed. Really, really enjoyed that. PNC Park is another in Pittsburgh that I think is a fantastic park. In terms of like the new parks,
Mm-hmm.
because it's hard to imagine. I mean, Dodger Stadium's the third oldest park in baseball. And Fenway is another one that is I would tell every baseball fan to put it on his or her bucket list. But so Fenway's got to be in the conversation, although I wasn't quite as impressed with Fenway as maybe some other people seem to be, but it's certainly near the top of the list, I think. You asked me my least favorite park. That's a really tough one.
Is it in Chicago? Is it the park in Chicago? I'm not. My feelings aren't going to get hurt. I love the team, but I'll admit the park is it's a Kmart. Is what it is.
And I actually think it's better than it used to be.
Yeah, they improved.
I mean, today compared to what it was 10 years ago, I can't remember how many years ago it was when they sort of like took out some of the upper deck seats, and
it was about 10 or 12 years ago.
And now they've basically like thrown up a statue of I think there's a Jerry Dybzinski statue around.
It's right next to the Melildo Perez one.
Yeah, a little statue happy there on the south side.
I agree.
I would. It's easier for me probably to like rattle off 3 or 4 that I would put near the bottom of my list, and I would put the Cell somewhere squarely in the bottom 5 probably. I went to Citi Field this year for opening day,
which is relatively new, right? That was built probably from the last 4 or 5 years, right?
Yeah. I would say it's. I can't remember the last year. Shea was maybe like 2008 or 9 or something like that. I wasn't super impressed with Citi Field. It was okay. I mean, maybe that's one of those where I'm. Rather than it literally being one of the worst 4 or 5 parks I've been to, maybe it's just like the expectations game,
Does it kind of lack character, sort of?
I thought well, I'll put it this way. I went there with our mutual buddy, Jeremy Shermack. And at one point in the game, I turned around to Jeremy and I said, does this kind of remind you of the Cell a little bit on the inside? So there's your answer. As far as character goes,
I heard they have a Shake Shack there, though. So that
you got that. You got that going for you. I didn't see any churros though.
So what is it about a place like Dodger Stadium that makes it really appealing to you?
I think for me, the history is important, and obviously at a place like Wrigley, a place like Fenway, I mean, there's just so much history where we're running out of a lot of these parks where you can look out there and kind of just see the ghost of, the truly great players, and particularly, great players from, earlier than the 1970s or 80s. And I mean, how many parks do we have left really, even that were built before the 90s at this point? I mean,
Kansas City, Oakland.
California. I mean,
right, which has been renovated so much that it doesn't look like it did a few years ago.
Off my head, though, I want to say, like, we're maybe around 10 ballparks that predate, the Sky Dome or
right.
something like that.
Yeah.
So that's a plus for me. Being in a ballpark where you can look out there and you can think, wow, Babe Ruth played here, or whatever.
Sandy Koufax.
Yeah.
Right, Sandy Koufax. I mean, when I went to Dodger Stadium the second night, it was a Friday night and it was fireworks night. Sure. And so I thought, okay, well, you see that on the schedule and you think the night before that, it was bobblehead night, and it was a four-man bobblehead of Steve Garvey, Dusty Baker, Ron Say, and Reggie Smith. The original 30. They were the first quartet of teammates to all hit 30 home runs.
Yeah.
So I was excited about the bobblehead, and so I thought fireworks night. Well, that's nice but I'm not. I mean, I like fireworks as much as the next guy, but I'm not 10 years old, so whatever. But they actually let the fans go out onto the outfield.
Nice.
Really?
For the fireworks.
Sweet.
And I didn't realize that until about the 8th inning when the announcer says, these are the areas that you need to go on the field for the fireworks show. And I turn around to my then fiance, now wife, and I said, did he just say we get to go on the field? Talk about burying. It's not fireworks night. It's like you get to walk out on the hallowed ground.
Oh man!
So we go out there, and I was like such a nerd. I took my shoes and socks off.
Take a couple clippings.
Yeah, take a couple of clippings. I may or may not have actually kissed the ground. I did. I'll just admit to that. So
you gave Ethier a back rub. There's
now a restraining order against me. When the Dodgers come to town, I have to sit in the upper deck. But no, I think for me that's a big part of it, and it's still a really nice park. Where it is. I don't know if you guys have been to Dodger Stadium. But, where it's laid out, like the surrounding area is really nice. The vibe, just got that Southern California vibe, which is really nice. The park is in really good repair. I mean, you wouldn't know that it's a 50-plus-year-old park. Somebody just dropped you down there. You would probably assume that the park was newer than that. And so I was highly impressed. It was on my list of parks that, definitely must see, but I liked it even more than I really thought that I would, so I want to go back. I mean, my wife and I, we're already talking about trying to get back out there, by next summer if we don't go this year.
And it sounds like you usually go to more than one game, you said?
Yeah, I went to a couple of Dodger games while I was there. I also we made a pit stop in San Diego before that because, you figure try to get as many ballparks in as you can if you're in a particular geographic
area. Yeah.
And so we went to Petco, and Petco, I thought I was really going to be more impressed with it based on its reputation, and I found it to be okay, middle of the pack kind of ballpark.
It's in the Gaslight district down there, right? Sort of.
Yeah.
Or okay, yeah. Looks like a nice area. I've never been, but
it's nice. It's a nice area. Really impressed with the town. That was the first time I'd ever been to San Diego, and so I was really impressed with San Diego. And it's the kind of park maybe that would grow on you, but again, like another thing, like kind of coming back to what you were asking me earlier about like what goes into liking a park, and I think one of the things that I was struck with in terms of the difference between San Diego and LA was just the culture of the fans. I mean, in LA, you've got, everybody's in a Dodgers jersey. Everybody's in a Dodgers cap. I mean, the atmosphere, you can just tell they have great fans.
Really established fan base.
Really established fan base. And in San Diego, they were playing the Cardinals, and, Cardinals fans travel well anyway. That's their rep, But really, it seemed as though there were as many, if not more, Cardinals fans at the San Diego game as there were Padres fans. And then the Padres fans, there's so many different color schemes that they've worn through the year, and
Yeah.
and all of their fans are, you got 30% of their fans are wearing the, Dave Winfield era 1970s brown and
Yeah.
mustard or whatever,
which are kind of gorgeous in their own way.
Yeah.
I agree. And then you have some people with the the Tony Gwynn Taco Bell era
Yeah.
uniforms, and then the that period of time back in the 90s when they wore navy blue and whatever, when Kevin Iddy was there, and then like their modern uniforms. And so, like, even amongst the San Diego faithful, it doesn't really pop like seeing like the sea of blue, at a Dodger game.
That's a really good point. I never thought about that. How you could fragment your own fans by redoing your jerseys every few years.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, they really struck me. I never really thought about it either until I was at the game, and I was just looking around and thinking, there's no real universal Padre sort of mark in the crowd, whereas Cardinals fan is wearing their bright red, and so you see them. But I just don't think the passion for baseball is quite there in that town either, and I can understand why. I mean, if I lived in San Diego, I'm a hardcore baseball fan, but if I lived in San Diego all the time, I might be finding other things to do. Those people are so chilled out, and
everybody's windsurfing and fish tacos and all that. Yeah, right.
You've got all that. Baseball might not be as high of a priority, but
they might have a little better product on the field this year, at least with all the sort of unexpected moves they made this offseason. Yeah.
I would like last year. It was the guys that they had out there. It's I'm hard pressed off the top of my head to name more than 3 or 4 people that were in their lineup. I mean, just a really generic lineup that they threw out there. And so, I mean, I agree with you. Upton and Matt Kemp and even Will Myers, they've got some players. I don't know how good they'll be, but they've got some players that at least are fun to watch. So
they're banking on guys that will hopefully be able to sort of resurrect their careers, in San Diego. So cool, man. I would think that more players, and I mentioned this I think on a previous podcast, that more players would want to play in San Diego just because it looks like it's got some of the best weather in the country. If you're rich, hell, you could live in Beverly Hills and just go down to San Diego for your games. I mean, it's not really a city that I get the impression is kind of like mired in poverty or anything like that. So I guess there's just better things to do in San Diego.
The best free agency pitch that you could make if you were the GM in San Diego is, just meet the guy at the airport, hand him the keys to a convertible, and say, dude, just tool around town for 2 or 3 days, and then come back to me and we'll talk numbers.
If you can stomach winning 65 games next year, hey, you'll be in a good backdrop. Yeah.
Winning is not, the most important thing in the world to you, but having a nice suntan and pretty girls is, you can do worse than play in San Diego.
Doesn't look like a bad place to live. Now, you also went to, I want to talk about this, back in, I think it was like in late March, it was about a week or so before the season started, right? You went to the exhibition game in Montreal. Was that between the Mets and the Blue Jays?
That was the Mets and the Blue Jays. They actually played 2.
Okay, 2.
We went there for both of them.
Now, I've been to Montreal. Montreal is actually the only city I've ever been in Canada, and it's probably not the best representation of Canada just because the city has such a European feel to it. When I look at Montreal, I always thought it was weird that they even had a team. Just because it's such a European city, it just doesn't scream like baseball, right? Yeah. So how was it, man? I mean, like the place kind of looks like it's fallen apart from like recent photos I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of looked like it was falling apart 20 years ago too.
Right.
I couldn't believe it when I found out initially that they were actually going to play MLB exhibition games there. For me, I mean, it was a must go because I thought, now how often do you see like sort of like a zombie ballpark reanimating for even a game or two. And I thought Olympic Stadium I thought that ship sailed 10 years ago.
Right.
You missed out on that one, you know. So it's the next best thing to having a time machine. And
there were old Olympic programs under the seats still.
Right. It's like, wait a minute, Bruce Jenner in the decathlon. But yeah, it's definitely a bit of a dump. I mean, I say that with affection.
Sure.
I enjoyed every second of it. I mean, it was a little bit like taking a trip into the past. I mean, it really was. I mean, partly because the ballpark is dingy and dirty, and you know, the architecture is screaming 1970s era. You know, I mean, it fits right in there. I mean, obviously, it's a little more interesting looking from the outside, in particular, than the so-called concrete donut stadiums of the 70s. You know, Riverfront and Three Rivers and Veterans Stadium and all those kinds of parks that didn't have a lot, you know, multi-sport, multi-purpose venues. And I guess my understanding is that Olympic Stadium is, you know, I guess that the Toronto Argonauts play there. And
in Montreal? Wow, okay. Weird.
I mean, not the Toronto Argonauts, the Montreal Alouettes.
Alouettes, yeah. Right.
It'd be extremely weird. Keep me honest, Gabe. But,
yeah, right.
Because, I mean, I think that was, wasn't that the team that, I hate to say this name on any podcast, but that was the team that Trustman coached, I think.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Maybe part of the bad vibes there was the ballpark still had a little bit of the taint of Mark Trestman on it. You know?
He won a championship there.
He did.
You know, and that's worth like a half a Super Bowl.
Right. Yes.
I think it equals one playoff win. In the US.
I was just talking about the Grey Cup the other day with my friends, you know. Right.
But the ballpark, you know, they resuscitated it from, you know, whatever state it was.
How was the surface? Because it was artificial surface, right?
Yeah.
Were there like just huge patches of it, like gone?
Right. You know, you're just waiting for like guys to catch their you know, cleats in the seam, blow out their MCLs and whatever. You know, it was AstroTurf, so that alone was you know, weird to see, because in this day and age, you really don't see any, like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it was field turf, but I mean, it looked like AstroTurf. And
the ghost of Andre Dawson's knees were there.
Right. May God rest their souls.
Right. Or did people have Gary Carter, Jerry Curl wigs on by any chance?
You know, it's funny. Gary Carter's wife was there, and his family was there. And
I bet it was kind of like a select, you know, with them kind of resurrecting bringing back the park for those couple days. Yeah, it was probably a reason to trot some people out. Yeah,
they had about, I don't know, maybe about 15 members of the '94 team that got robbed of a division title by the labor situation. So they were there, and they kind of got to come out and take their bows. And then Gabe, I think you probably know, or maybe you don't. I got to meet Ellis Valentine.
Yeah, right. So, I saw the picture, I think. Yeah,
I was, because I followed him on Twitter, and we just like had a brief exchange on Twitter. He's like, "Well, I'm going to be there in, you know, section 117 or whatever. You'll come down and see me."
Cool.
And I'm like, "Well, I will." And so he was pretty easy to spot. You know, he's about 6'4", 350 pounds. He hit his weight these days, I mean, straight to the Hall of Fame, you know, Ted Williams territory. But yeah, he was a nice guy. So, you know, got to meet him and kind of had some poutine, which was my first poutine experience. So that was nice. You know, all the people speak in French. You know, I had one guy come up to me, and he's asking me something in French, and I had to drop a no français on him. So,
do they make announcements in French and English? Stadium announcements?
The stadium announcements were in English, I believe, if I recall correctly. But gosh, there were so many people. Like, we had a problem with our tickets. we'd gotten the tickets, through a third party. I think we'd gotten them off of StubHub. I want to say maybe I can't remember. It's not important where we got the tickets, but we had these tickets, and so there was an issue when we got down there. People were in the seats, and and these were hard copy tickets, by the way. And they showed us their hard copy ticket, and their hard copy ticket was for the exact same row and seat. So it's like, hey, wait a minute, right? So we go up to the customer service booth or whatever to try and clarify this, and they're speaking French there. So you're trying, maybe there was like one lady who was bilingual, but they're speaking French. And so we had that situation. They wrote us up other seats. We go down there. People are also in those. So we have to go back, get a third handwritten ticket. And we finally, on the third try, we were able to get seated. But it was like the bottom of the second before we finally settled. So
was it packed?
It was packed, man. It was a full house both nights, over 50,000. They announced I think on the first night that it was the largest crowd for baseball in the history of the park.
Yeah, I remember those last few years in Montreal with the Expos. They had a hard time drawing 10,000.
Yeah. It was a week's worth of attendance. I mean, based on those standards. And they're actually having 2 more games there this year.
Oh, cool.
I believe the Reds are playing the Blue Jays a couple of games at the end of March. So, nice. And there's a part of me that really would like to go back, but I've got lots of really good reasons not to, particularly financial reasons not to, but man, it's
beautiful city too.
It's tempting. It's a gorgeous city. The nightlife was wink wink, the nightlife was pretty good. It was it was a fun city. I wish that we would have had more than one night there. We were there just, I believe it was I can't remember. It was either Friday, Saturday, or Thursday. I guess it was Friday, Saturday. Friday night, we went to the game, and then we went and just took in a little bit of the city, went to just a couple of local bars, just kind of walked around the downtown area. And then the next day we hit, it was an afternoon game, early afternoon game. And so we went to that, and then we just drove to New York City, straight from there. So we only had one night there. I would like to be able to go back to Montreal and maybe have just a little bit more time to take in some of the other parts of the city because, it was, as you said, Gabe, it's a very European vibe. It's just a really neat place. And, I'd like to get back there at some point, but it's a lot easier to have enthusiasm for going when they're playing at Olympic Stadium,
Cool.
Speaking of nightlife, what were your favorite surrounding neighborhoods of all the stadiums you went to?
Oh wow, that's a really good question. Let me think.
It's interesting because a lot of stadiums nowadays are just in the middle of the suburbs, so you just drive to them and you got nowhere else to go.
You do. You do, like Milwaukee, for instance. In a way, Milwaukee's easy to get in and out of, but although they turned tailgating into an art form up there. But that's another one for, I guess, my less impressive ballparks list is Miller Park. Gabe, I would probably put it somewhere in the.
Yeah. The surrounding area is boring. There's nothing there, but I sort of like the architecture to it.
I like it from the outside. I don't know if from the inside. I don't know. To me it's a little shadowy and I don't know. It feels, or at least it used to feel almost like you were inside a greenhouse or something.
I can see that.
I enjoy I think they have good fans, and they've as a dad, it's a pretty kid friendly.
Sure.
Park. I don't know. In terms of like areas like around the ballpark, San Diego would be hard to top on that one. I thought Pittsburgh. I was really, really impressed with Pittsburgh. I had never been to Pittsburgh until I went there in summer of 2013. And saw we actually went to an old-fashioned doubleheader, a one-ticket doubleheader, which you don't see much anymore. It was actually a scheduled doubleheader, And so I was really impressed with Pittsburgh. I thought that was a great ballpark. I really like the area. So scenic. I mean, they really make use. I don't think there are enough ballparks that really make use of the scenery around the ballpark.
You can kind of see the skyline, right? It's right behind the outfield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really make use of the skyline, and you can see the bridges running. Really makes for a really beautiful sort of like panorama. When you're behind home plate or whatever. It's really nice. And so, Pittsburgh, I found to be impressive. I mean, Los Angeles, the area around it is scenic. It's really close to Chinatown. So, like, right around there, we actually wanted to stop and, like, grab something to eat before we went to the ballpark one night. But, like, literally everything was Chinese food, which, nothing against Chinese food, but it's, like, I don't do it very, very much. So we're, like, driving around looking at
How could you not get a Dodger dog as well?
Oh, I know. Totally got a Dodger dog.
Yeah.
Ballpark food.
That was going to be my question. You mentioned the poutine earlier. For those who don't know, that's like French fries with gravy, right?
French fries with gravy and sort
of like what was the best food you ate, or like who had the best food at what park?
The poutine was great. San Diego had really nice food. Pittsburgh had really good food.
The newer parks, I mean,
nailed
they go all out.
The thing about Petco is the food there was incredible, but the thing that's interesting, the concourse was amazing. I mean, it's super. What you really almost feel like it's. I told my wife, I said it felt like a mall park, because, and that's a compliment and a put down at the same time. Sure. Because I mean, it's like the amenities and the food options and all the things that they have when you're out walking around the concourse is great, but it's also literally sort of like segregated from the inside of the ballpark, so that like when you're in the large swaths of the concourse, you can't even see what's going on in the ballpark. You're really you're in the ballpark, but you're outside the ballpark. You're not getting. It doesn't feel like you're at a baseball game,
right?
And it feels like you're in the world's best like mall food court. If you're hungry and you're into that, or you're not a very passionate fan, then I guess that's just fine. I mean, it's like Wrigley. I still think Wrigley has like basically like the worst food of any ballpark I've ever been. I love the place anyway, but if you're going to Wrigley expecting to get like really good
food, well, the upside is, though, there are so many options in the neighborhood with Wrigley.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to go to a place before or after the game, it's one of the few parks that's really embedded in a neighborhood. You
have no idea how long those hot dogs have been in those things those guys are carrying.
Right.
The only thing I trust is the little malt with the wooden spoon.
Right.
Those hot dogs. It's like Rick Russell was the
they ordered them during his last game. Still sitting on the same box. Well, Ricky. Growing up in Kentucky, were you pretty much surrounded by Reds fans? I mean, just geographically speaking, was that kind of the preferred team?
I would say the Reds were the closest thing that we had to a preferred team. I mean, that was the only ballpark I got to go to when I was a kid.
Right.
I had a real rural upbringing. I grew up. That was actually the closest ballpark, and that was about a 3-hour drive.
Mm-hmm.
So usually I was able to go to one game. My adulthood has actually worked out rather well. I mean, like 8-year-old me would be really freaking psyched if he knew how life had turned out. Because I actually get to go to these places. But for me, that was it. It would be one Reds game a year. Now I sound like somebody's grandpa. It's like, well, when I was a kid, we went to one Reds game a year, and we were glad of it. And it was at Riverfront Stadium, which was a dump. But that was it. So that was probably the closest, but I'll tell you what sort of changed that equation was cable TV. I became more of a Cubs fan through watching WGN, but the Atlanta Braves for a time really became very, very popular in the area where I was growing up.
All those TBS games,
all those TBS games, and I guess because it was a southern, it was like the South's team. I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially.
Yeah, right. It was before the Florida teams.
Yeah,
you know?
that was like all they had.
I say the Florida teams like they even matter. You know what I mean? Like 20 years later, neither of those teams have a fan base.
Florida should have stuck with spring training. You know,
Yeah.
the great
Right. Yeah. So now, have you been to the gosh, what is the newer Reds Park? Great American? Is that what it's called?
American Ballpark, yeah.
Have you been there?
I've been there once. Yeah.
Okay.
I actually went there. That was one of the last things I did before I moved to Chicago in 2003.
Okay.
I was like, okay, well, I haven't been to this ballpark yet. And I think that was actually the year that it opened. I went once the year that it opened. And I found it to be a pretty nice park.
Yeah.
I thought it was a reasonably nice little ballpark, pretty intimate. You felt like you were. I mean, I actually was literally close to the field. I had really good seats, but the sight lines seemed good. You felt like you were, kind of as a fan. You felt like you were pretty much kind of like on the field, relative to some other ballparks where you go in and you sit down, even down in the infield box area, and it just feels like you're not really present in the same way. So I actually thought that was a pretty nice park. Riverfront was one that always is going to be kind of near and dear to my heart. I have a couple of seat backs from Riverfront as souvenirs, and even though, like, if you could resuscitate Riverfront Stadium and bring it back tomorrow in the same condition and everything that it was in back in the 70s and the 80s, I'm sure I'd be the first person to have to critically say this is awful by today's standards. But there's always that part of you that has a little bit of nostalgia for your childhood, and so I'll probably never be able to like truly give a critical assessment of Wrigley just because I'm in the tank for it, because when I was a kid, that was my part.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's number one on your list, Ricky, that you haven't been to that you want to check out?
Oh man, that's a good question. Well, I can tell you that the two that like Lord willing and the creek don't rise, as they say, the two that I want to add for sure this coming summer is Arlington and in Houston.
Okay.
Nice. Nice. Texas.
Yeah, those are hopefully going to be 20 and 21 this summer. If I don't add any other new parks, I'm hoping that I can at least get those in. I've got a good buddy that lives in Fort Worth area.
Okay.
So,
which is a fun town. I've got some friends down there too.
Okay.
It's a fun area.
Yeah, Texas. I've actually never been to Texas, and it's always a good tip off. You can tell like what states I haven't been to. If I haven't been to the ballpark there, I probably haven't been.
Right.
I make a point, if I can. If I've been there, I that's the one place I make sure I hit. But I'm looking forward to those. Just not that I necessarily have any I'm not particularly excited about seeing the Rangers ballpark for any reason. I mean, it looks like it's a nice enough park. A little more jazzed about going to Houston. I think I've always sort of thought that it's still Minute Maid, right? Is it Minute Maid still?
Right, yeah.
I guess, yeah, I think so.
It's not Enron.
Yeah.
Right. No, I know it's not Enron. Yeah. Right. But I think it's one of the parks that's kept its name now, maybe for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right?
If you keep it for 10 years now, I mean, that's.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
The one I want to go to, and I'll ask Levi and Jonathan as well. I want to go to the park in Miami. I think it looks cool. I like the fact that they went against the trend of like kind of the faux retro, which I like the fact that it said hell with it. We're going to make it look really modern, I kind of think that's kind of cool,
Aspects of it are definitely psychedelic.
Yeah, that outfield looks like a bad acid trip or something.
You don't want to drop acid before somebody Marlins homers.
I guess if you did drop acid at that park, you'd have plenty of room to roam freely because you'd be about one of about 20 fans there.
Right?
Absolutely. No, you have a good place to get foul balls, I would think.
Right.
Definitely.
Hey, have you ever got a foul ball at any of the stadiums?
I have never gotten a foul ball, and I can say I've never really even come. I don't even have like the one that got away story.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I've never even gotten a ball during BP. I'm overdue. But
I was close to one. It was when I was like you growing up. I got to go to like a Cubs Cardinal game either in St. Louis at the Old Bush or at Wrigley about once a year.
We all grew up about 2 hours from St. Louis.
Yeah,
so it was sort of the the default place.
We were on vacation in Colorado the year the Rockies started, and so somehow my mom knew somebody who worked for the Rockies, and we got tickets.
That was when they were playing at Mile High.
It was at the old Mile High Stadium, and we were behind home plate, maybe 15 or 20 rows, and it was probably 10 feet to the right of me. I was maybe 11 years old. I wanted to crawl over the people that were there and dive and get it.
That age, you got to take advantage of the social acceptability of just jumping over people.
Yeah.
Right.
Pushing old ladies out of the way.
Yeah.
43,
It was like seeing a baseball game in a Roman Coliseum.
Yeah.
I'll say that. It was huge.
Yeah.
Seeing a game at Mile High. And I'll never forget, it was the Braves. It was the Braves versus the Rockies, and it was Fred McGriff's first game as a Brave.
Huh.
Oh, no kidding.
Because I remember they introduced it. They're like, hey, and his first game as a Brave.
Wow.
Yeah, 93.
His first game as a Brave, Fred McGriff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was Dante Bichette playing with the Rockies?
Yeah, Dante Bichette, and all over the stadium, at the souvenir stands, they had these posters that had David Need, and it said the need for speed.
Oh, nice.
And it was him with a baseball, oh yeah.
That is not a reference I thought I would hear today. Wow. All right.
Was he the first Rocky? I mean,
yeah.
He was on the inaugural team.
Yeah.
Had
Eric Young. Yeah, right.
Yep, Dante Bichette.
Draft or whatever, but Gabe, I think you're really right about the Marlins Park. I'm glad that somebody finally said, you know what, screw it.
Yeah.
Because I think really a lot of the parks that were made in the last 10, 12 years or whatever, it's almost like it's become like a different kind of mediocrity than the concrete nuts. You can't. A lot of these ballparks, other than the team's name that's on top of the scoreboard, they seem kind of interchangeable, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't like this trend of making something look like it has history when it doesn't. I haven't been to a game there, but I've driven by the vicinity of the St. Louis Park, and I don't like the looks of it.
Yeah,
I really think it's just this faux retro kind of generic.
It looks like Camden Yards.
Yeah, but
Parts of
I don't know if they pulled it off though.
Yeah, it's not as good as Camden Yards.
Yeah, I mean, and Camden was really the first park to do that, so they got it right. They were the people that kind of drafted the template, and other people have followed it, and just really it hasn't been as charming. I have been to San Francisco. I did go to, I guess it's called AT&T. It was called Pac Bell when I went there back. It had only been open a couple of years, and it's kind of got the same thing. I mean, it's nice because it's by the water, and it's San Francisco's very vibrant city and walkable and all of that, but it also is trying to look like a park built in 1940, even though it was built in 1999. Yeah.
I mean, talking about the bucket list stadiums. I mean, that's the one that everybody raves about.
Yeah.
Is AT&T. So I mean, Camden Yards I've never been to. That's another one that I would love to get to. Those are probably the first two that come to mind. Like if you were asking, you say, okay, you can only go to two more that you've never been to. Which two do you pick?
Yeah.
I think it would have to be those. I went to Old Bush, which
Okay.
I guess actually technically it was Bush 2 or whatever, but the one that was built in the 60s.
Yeah.
It looked like Riverfront and Pittsburgh and Oakland, all those were kind of, and County up in Milwaukee, all those were really just followed the same blueprint.
Yeah, it did. But I can say I've never once had any kind of priority to go to a Cardinals game. I haven't been to the new Cardinals Park, and I think it's partly because I just kind of feel there's, I mean, if the circumstances of my life ever, put me near St. Louis, I would certainly go. But
sure,
I've been to a few games there, and I mean, it's mediocre, but I've sat in different areas. There's not an awful seat. It's one of those stadiums where there's really not an awful seat in the place, but like Gabe said, it's trying to be an old stadium, and it's not an old stadium.
right.
Yeah.
I almost would like to see some of the same things like happen with uniforms. I'm tired of with like the whole like because everybody's wearing like these pajama pants anyway. It's not like you look like the Lou Gehrig out there.
Yeah, everybody's wearing CC's Sabathia's uniform.
Yeah, like literally in his size, right? And so I would love to see like the uniforms kind of go back to the future a little bit, and let's get some of the. I mean, I'm not saying we have to go back completely the full like 1970s, like out there. The White Sox don't need to bring back their shorts or anything, but
No.
I would like to see a little more forward,
a bit more of evolution. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like what the Blue Jays did a couple years ago. They sort of took a little more of a modern spin on their older uniform.
Yep.
And Baltimore did it too.
Yep.
And those right now would be my two favorite baseball uniforms, Toronto and Baltimore.
Yeah. I love what both of them did. I especially love what Baltimore did.
Oh, the cartoon bird, you can't beat it, man.
Yeah.
Bird, and I'm in the tank for the white front panel. I love that. Like the
tricolor. Yeah, right.
Tricolor, so yeah, when the Orioles announced that they were doing that, I was just like, oh my gosh, holy crap! That's really really cool. And so, and I got to believe the cartoon bird. They've been pretty good.
Right.
Yeah, it's the magic.
Yeah, because they had that during the Ripken era, like the latter Ripken era. They had that ugly ass bird. You know what I'm talking about?
It's awful.
Yeah, that was a stupid looking.
Yeah.
Described as like the ornithologically correct.
Yeah, it's like the Audubon Society.
It was.
Yeah. If those birds came to life, obviously it's clear which one I'd want to have a beer with. You know what I mean? It would be the cartoon bird. All right. Listen, the guy's drunk right now. All right.
Yeah, from the late Ripken era, that's the kind of bird that's just going to crap on your shoulder.
Right.
And they did by starting 0-20 that one year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, God bless them.
Good stuff. Well, Ricky, thank you so much, man. We had a lot of fun. Good times, and maybe we'll get to a ballpark together sometime soon.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. That anytime, man, anytime. I'm there. I'll buy the first round.
And just to confirm, David Need was in fact the first Rocky.
Okay.
So huge bonus points on that. And he was taken in the expansion draft from the Atlanta Braves.
There you go.
We are.
It's all full circle, buddy.
Yep.
All together.
Excellent. Well, Ricky, thanks so much again, buddy.
Yes,
happy. Spring training's right around the corner. Hell, month away.
We're not far away now. So.
Yep.
That's right. Well, buddy, take care and keep listening and tell everybody else to do the same.
All right, keep up the good work, man. I've been checking out the things that y'all have been doing, and I love it. So,
Thank you. We all appreciate that,
Yeah.
and man, we're who doesn't like talking about music and baseball, So
nobody the cartoon bird.
Right.
I guarantee you.
Be sure to look me up if you're in Kansas City.
Yeah.
All right, you got it. I've never been to Kaufman.
No,
so.
You got to go to
All right.
Kaufman. Yeah.
All right.
It's
right.
one they've renovated really nicely too. They modernized it, but without, in my opinion, just totally going over the top and making it look completely different than it used to. They did a really good job rehabbing that park a few years ago.
So that's another one that's on my list. It's one of the older parks now.
Yeah,
pretty family friendly as well.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Beautiful place. All right, Ricky. Thanks again, buddy.
Thanks, Ricky.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Take care.
Take care.
Well, everybody, thanks so much for spending some more time with us here on Rock and Roll Shin-Soo Choo. I want to give a big shout out to Ricky Cobb for stopping by and hanging out with us for a little while. Great to see him, as well as hear about all of his travels throughout Major League Baseball parks. So I want to thank you guys as well, Jonathan and Levi, as well as our fans. I want you to check us out on Facebook. And also, you can follow us on Twitter. We're at RockIn. That's the letter N, RockIn Chew. And as well as on Instagram, that's our handle too, RockIn Chew. And also, we've got a really good-looking website that is in the works. Should be launching really soon, and it's rockchew.com. Okay, rockchew.com. I've seen the draft of it, and it is really a beauty. So I think you all are really going to enjoy it. We're going to have some really cool stuff on there, links to all of our social media pages, as well as just some fun stuff about baseball and rock and roll. So look forward to that soon. We'll be rolling that out here in the coming days. So on that note, thanks again, and we will see you guys next time. Peace out.